Hey, Dad.
Hey, what?
What do you call a sleepwalking nun?
Yeah, I don't know.
A roaming Catholic.
Roaming. Go to your room.
No.
You're listening to The Wayward Willis with Jon and Logan, where two atheists discuss religion, culture, and maybe some politics. If you're offended by blasphemy, profanity, or you hate fun, this podcast may not be right for you. And now, on to the show.
Hey, you.
It's us.
The worst sort of people.
I'm your host, Jon.
And I'm Logan, a human-goat hybrid.
And this week, we'll learn that religious people haven't taken an economics class.
Spoiler alert, neither have I.
We're talking about tithing.
So, what even is tithing?
Well, the dictionary defines a tithe as a tenth part of something paid as a voluntary contribution or as a tax especially for the support of a religious establishment. And that's the definition we're going to use. The important part of this definition is the statement that the tithe is used as support for a religious establishment.
Meaning that it isn't a tithe when you tip your pizza delivery guy. Unless the pizza is heavenly, I suppose.
You should give your pizza guy more than 10% anyway. We've already mentioned that churches are legally recognized as charities, supported by the tax-free donations of church members. But we haven't talked about why churches operate this way.
Aside from being rip-off artists, of course.
Tithing has its roots in the Old Testament, while God was still a bloodthirsty tribal deity.
The tribal bloodthirsty god is the best god.
The best. Immediately after Adam and Eve were kicked out of the Garden of Eden, God started requiring sacrifices from people. The word sacrifice signifies giving something of importance up. So God required the most spotless, perfect member of a flock or a herd. Sometimes he trolled people by asking them to sacrifice their firstborn son, because sons are better than daughters, and then turned around and was like, "Chill, fam, it's just a prank."
I tried this prank once. It did not end very well for me.
Logan is actually dead.
I am a corpse. This is a zombie podcast now. All your brains belong to me.
So anyway, the word tithe in the religious context has come to be synonymous with a tenth. This is a tenth of your income, a tenth of your time, or a tenth of your property.
Not to be confused with a teenth, which, that's a very different thing.
Is that like 10% of your teeth?
No. Oh god, you don't actually know what a teenth means, do you?
Oh, I don't. What is it?
It pertains to drugs, specifically cocaine, I think. And I believe it's like a 13th of a gram, or I'm not exactly sure, honestly. Now I feel like an idiot.
Okay, well, you're just a bad person.
It's about drugs, trust me.
Okay. So giving the tithe a definitive amount makes it easier to quantify exactly what you're supposed to give. And it makes it easier for church leaders to gauge whether or not you're doing your part.
Kind of like how 20% is the socially acceptable rate to tip your waiter. But in this case, it would be like your waiter expecting you to give them money just for talking about food instead of actually bringing it to you and letting you eat it.
It's really funny that you put it that way because that's an apt comparison. So the first time the concept of a tenth shows up in scripture is in Genesis, when Abram rescues his nephew Lot, whose wife had a sodium intake problem.
Too soon.
From 4 kings who sacked Sodom and Gomorrah, and then gives the priest Melchizedek,
whoa,
I don't know,
hey,
a tenth of everything he owns in gratitude for God's blessing. From there, the concept of a tenth persists throughout the Old and New Testaments.
But not the New Testament.
Or the New Testament?
Or the Noob Testament.
Or my favorite, the Nude Testament.
Ooh, or the Newt Testament.
Ooh, I feel like that would be a cute little testament.
Oh, no, cute little testament. Who's the cute little testament? You are.
So the tenth is formally established in Leviticus, where all of God's rules are laid out. Whenever the Bible talks about the tithe, it calls it a free will offering. But don't you think it seems odd that if what you wanted was for someone to give something out of their own free will, you'd have to codify it and require it?
Basically like working on the weekends. If you could go ahead and come in on Saturday, that would be great.
Yeah. Doesn't it seem suspicious that a voluntary offering would be required? I mean, does it seem like whoever wrote the Bible didn't really understand what free will or voluntary even mean? Here, Logan, do this with me. Hey there, Logan. I'm Jon. I'm the pastor of the Church of Insipid Inanity.
Hi, Jon. How can I help you?
Oh, well, you can have a lower voice for one, but I'd like you to give me 10% of everything you own.
No thanks. 30% of everything I own already goes to some bitch named FICA.
Who dat bitch? So, yeah, free will. Optimally, the scenario we just acted out wouldn't result in guilt or shame because, I don't know, it just makes sense.
Hey, what did I tell you about logicking?
To not to?
Exactly. Go to your room.
So it doesn't seem to make sense to religious people, though. Some churches keep track of what each member gives, and some even require their members to fill out pledge forms to forecast their giving for the year.
That just sounds like membership fees with extra steps.
Yeah, this makes perfect sense from a business standpoint. After all, churches are just businesses. But it makes no sense in the purest theological context. I mean, we've been talking about how these offerings are meant to be offerings to God, not to a religious business. That turns the whole idea of tithes into a farce. And the reason most Christians tithe is because they believe that if they do, God will bless them and provide for them. I've had more than one Christian tell me that when they stop tithing, they fall onto hard times, but when they tithe, they have everything they need. I'm not going to say that isn't true, but I will say that these people don't math very well or understand economics. It's really not that difficult to see. When you know that you're going to lose 10% of your income, you're able to anticipate it and budget accordingly. When you don't have money earmarked like that, it becomes liquid and you spend it on stupid shit like Ronco food dehydrators you see on TV while you're trying to stay awake for a Roseanne marathon on TV Land.
Or you just spend it all on video games and Nerf guns.
Oh, hell. If I didn't have money skimmed off the top of my paycheck every 2 weeks, I'd have like 50 more tattoos already. Or like 51. Or 52.
That's not excessive at all.
You are not wrong. Tithes are collected in churches in a couple of different ways. The most well-known method is the collection plate. This is the practice of deacons or ushers walking down the aisles of the sanctuary with collection plates or baskets and handing them to the person sitting on the end of each pew, who puts their tithe in and passes it on to the person next to them. Lather, rinse, repeat until the plate gets to the back, and so on.
Well, at least it's not a cup full of chewed up Cheez-Its and gross water.
That's nasty. You've undoubtedly heard the phrase, pass the plate, when speaking of donations. Well, this practice is silently judgy because people in the pews notice when you pass the plate without putting anything in it, and it kind of creates an uncomfortable feeling for you.
Like when your waiter stares at the check while you're writing in the tip.
The waiter again? Really?
I mean, it's pretty comparable, let's be honest.
Well, where are you eating?
Yesterday it was the Cheesecake Factory.
Oh, hoity-toity high-class waiters?
No. I think she was just curious what she was going to get tipped.
All right, that makes sense. So using your guilt against you, it incentivizes throwing some scratch in the plate just to bring back those warm fuzzies. Another way to collect tithes is to have tithing envelopes in which you're expected to write out a check and send it into the church or drop it into the plate when it's being passed around. This method supports the tithing pledges we just talked about because some people will write a check for their entire pledge and be done with it for the year. It's like tax season, but the church isn't maintaining highways or delivering your mail.
Or you can just put a bluff tithe into the plate, an envelope that just has a picture of your middle finger or something really awful. Or just like a penny or something. I'm not a great person, am I?
Well, no, but not because of that. Hey, you know what we used to do with the tithe envelopes when I was a kid? We viewed them as just scratch paper for doodling while the pastor was droning on about some bullshit. It was pretty fun.
You are the worst sort of PK.
My mom told me that. So now that we know how churches collect tithes, we're on to a big question. How do churches use tithes?
It's payday, bitches!
Well, like any other business, charity or not, a church has operating expenses. They need to keep the lights on, right?
Except for creepy dungeon churches. They don't need lights.
That sounds like a really interesting church.
It's bad.
Oh, okay. So the utilities, insurance, and mortgage are paid by the congregation's tithe. Unless we're talking about Mormons, the clergy gets paid by tithes too, as well as the mortgage or maintenance on a parsonage, which is a pastor's church-provided home. Now, I just said, unless we're talking about Mormons, because unlike Muslims, Jews, Catholics, and Protestant Christians, Mormon clergy are unpaid volunteers. The goal is said to be to ensure that the clergy is leading the church out of their love of Jesus and not for financial gain.
That's nonsense. It's all about the Benjamins, baby.
And you know what? Joel Osteen could learn a thing or two from the Mormons. But after operating expenses have been paid, the rest of the church's money is used for church programs, like Vacation Bible School.
My favorite.
Or mission trips, or building expansion, or perhaps actual charitable work. Now, my experience with the church is that the vast majority of the church's money is spent on the church itself and its congregation, with very little going toward helping people outside of the church. This isn't the case all the time, but it's the overwhelming trend.
If you couldn't already tell by the insanely fancy architecture on just about every church you've seen that isn't out in the middle of nowhere, most churches look even nicer than some schools.
Seriously, with like huge basketball courts and auditoriums that are just insane.
Or giant flying buttresses.
Oh, I love the flying buttress.
Gross. Hey, that's enough of that. No more.
You could say I'm a buttress man.
No, I'm talking about architecture, and you're turning it into a sick, perverted thing, and I need you to stop right this instant.
Well, that's just like your opinion, man. So it's not inaccurate to say that when churches do charitable work outside of the congregation, it's often accompanied with a preachy, self-serving drive to increase the attendance at church.
Gotta promote, otherwise you end up with a podcast that only has 71 followers. Wait, nope, no, it's back down to 70 now.
Hurtful. A lot of church charities also do screening on applicants to ensure that they're living an approved lifestyle. And some of the Christians I know the best think that people who need help are just lazy drug addicts. They're not interested in helping these people unless they start living like a good Christian is supposed to. What really ticks me off about churches in America is that tithing money becomes this overarching obligation of its members and appears to be so important that, for example, when a person has a sick or disabled spouse and can't get to services on Sunday anymore, someone from the church will come to that person's house once a week, not to help take care of the sick or disabled person, but to pick up the tithe check.
God doesn't care about your broken leg, you lowly cancer patient. Show me the money.
Holy shit. Cancer and a broken leg? That's fucked up.
I mean, I had to make it dramatic.
It's pretty dramatic.
Drama.
So I've seen this in action with my own eyes, in my own experience. It's fucking disgusting. Make no mistake about it. Church in America is big business. There are estimates out there that somewhere around $71 billion flow through churches in America every year. Billion, with a B.
Which is not for cookie. It's for bear, or bee, or some other word that starts with B. There's quite a few of them.
Yeah.
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 Today's podcast brought to you by the letter B.
Ooh, I like it. We should start doing that.
No, we are not Sesame Street. Please move on.
Fuck you. Now, imagine what could happen if all of that money were being given to secular charities that have no interest in spreading some stupid message about invisible friends and eternal fire pits.
Oh, God. Oh, here it comes. It's the transition, everyone.
It's the transition that takes us right into our interview this week.
So smooth. Rico Suave.
I haven't done this before, but I want to preface this interview by saying that the views and opinions of this podcast should never be assumed to be the views and opinions of our guests, unless they say so. When you listen to our podcast, please keep this in mind. It is my great pleasure to introduce the guest for today's segment. It is Dr. Keith Taylor, who is the founder and president of Modest Needs. And Modest Needs is a charity that I am just fascinated with because it is different than your normal charity, and it works on smaller scales to make a bigger impact on a personal level. So unlike focused charities like food pantries and hospitals, this allows for short-term help with unexpected setbacks like hospital bills, mortgages, funerals, etc. And the way that this charity works, no cash is sent directly to applicants so that the needs are fulfilled directly and efficiently. So if you don't mind, Dr. Taylor, what I'd like to ask is, how did Modest Needs get started? Because from what I remember, it's actually a pretty fascinating story.
It's really kind of a funny story. It's the most unexpected thing. I used to be a professor. That was what I had always wanted to do. I wanted to teach. And so I did a degree and of all things, medieval British lit, which, as you might guess, is a very, very popular subject.
Yes, and I'm sure you're putting it to really good use.
Man, listen, I was the dead languages guy, okay? So if you wanted to know what something meant in some obscure old English document, that I was your man. And one of the things that you find out when you're, and this really does, this gets to your question, but you just got to hear this. One of the things that you find out when you're a new professor is that immediately the senior professors hand down the classes that they never want to see again. And so I was given, for my first graduate seminar that I taught, research and bibliography, which might be the most hated class in all of grad school for people who are working on English degrees. It basically amounts to learning how to do research. And the person, this is absolutely true, person who put the catalog together all the years ago had a sense of humor, and the course number was English 666.
Okay.
So I was teaching English 666, and I decided I was going to make the best of it, and ended up it was a wonderful experience, and of course this lasted over the course of a semester in the spring of 2002. And so, to make a long story short, one night I'm driving home from work. I lived at the time in Nashville, Tennessee, and I taught just outside of Nashville at Middle Tennessee State University, which has become quite the school over the last 10 years or so. I was driving home. It's about a 30-minute drive. And I was just thinking about how really lucky I was to have a job that so many people, for every person with a degree in this field, there might be, there's one job for every 100 people or so.
Oh, wow.
And the fact that I was able to get a job at all, much less at a really great school that was willing to let me teach graduate courses in my first year, whether they're research and bibliography or not, it was just wonderful. And I was driving home just having a moment of gratitude for my life. And I think we've all had those. You're just so thankful, just happy that things turned out the way they did.
Yes.
And I started thinking about all of the times in my life where that almost didn't happen. And there were many of those, especially in grad school. It was a tough time. At the time I was married, had a baby. While I was still doing my dissertation, we were poor as dirt. We worked, my wife and I at the time, we worked each a couple of jobs. And I worked 3 jobs. She worked 2.
Oh, wow.
Just to try to, just to keep things going, because, we couldn't have, while we were trying to finish our work at school, we couldn't have the kinds of jobs you would normally have. And so in any case, one of the jobs that I got was as a projectionist at a movie theater. And this was really great because, number one, I love movies very much. And number 2, I worked about 15 minutes every 2 hours. And as long as nothing broke, I could spend the other hour and 45 minutes writing my dissertation and getting paid. And they just thought that was fine. And I said, well, I love you, and I'm just going to keep working here. So my boss was this older guy, sort of a crotchety older guy who'd been a projectionist from, the beginning of time. And he really was. He was sort of a crotchety fellow, but a nice enough guy. All right, so one day I go out to get ready to go to school. I'm gonna teach a class at a community college where I was working. My car won't start, and I don't know a lot about cars, and so I just know it's not going to start. So I had to get it towed into a garage, which cost me a ton of money, especially at the time. And I find out that it's the timing chain that's broken, okay, and it's going to cost about what our rent costs to fix it. And I had to decide whether I was going to, because all of our money was committed. I mean, we didn't have any money to save. We could get by, but if anything like that happened, we were just in bad shape. We didn't have families that were in a position to help us or anything like that. And so, the timing chain to fix it was something like $700, $600, and that was what our rent was. And I didn't know how we were going to get that done or what we were going to do. So I had this choice. I could either fix the car and hope that by going to work I could pick up extra shifts or, find a way to make the money, or I could pay the rent and simply lose all my jobs because I won't show up.
Right. And that's a really tough choice.
There's, that it is. I mean, you really feel like you can't win. And in the end, what I decided to do was fix the car because at least I felt like that there was a chance I could, raise the rest of the money. I knew if I lost all my jobs, that was absolutely not going to happen.
Right. I just wanted to say it's kind of funny how you think about a car as a luxury until you realize that, unless you're in a city that has just phenomenal mass transit, you have to have a car or you can't live. It's less a luxury and much more a staple of life.
Oh, I could say so many things about other things that people used to consider luxury, like computers, right? Computers used to be a luxury. I'll get back to the question you asked in a second, but computers used to be a luxury, and people would always ask me, well, how can these people be needy if they have computers? And I'm like, listen, you can buy a computer for $300. And everybody has the internet. I mean, this is a utility. That's like asking me, why is electricity a luxury?
Right, or health insurance.
Yeah, or health insurance. Yeah, you got it. But yeah, I mean, you're exactly right. In certain major cities, you wouldn't need a car, but I didn't have that. And so in any case, I fixed the car. I continued to go to work. I tried to pick up shifts. I did pick up shifts. In the end, we just didn't have the money, and I got a 3-day pay or quit notice, which is not a really good feeling, because you're just about to be homeless and lose everything you worked for.
Right.
And so I went to work that night in the projection booth, and I was understandably very upset. But you know how it is. You don't really talk about these things because it's embarrassing. I mean, it's really embarrassing when your life comes down to a few $100s, really.
Right.
My boss saw me and asked me what was wrong, and I didn't really want to talk about it, and I didn't. And he said, well, come on, tell me. And I finally told him what had happened. And he, listened to me tell the story, and he said, well, that's really too bad. I hope things work out. Have a good night, and be sure you fix X, Y, and Z on this projector. Okay, thanks. Have a good night. And, and he didn't need, that's all he needed to say. I mean, I didn't ask him for anything. So I'm trying to figure out where we're going to be living in the next 48 hours. And I go to work the next night, and this guy's already left. And on the workbench, he's left me a check for the amount of our rent made out to the apartment complex. He knew where I lived.
Okay.
And that is how we paid the rent. He paid the rent for us. Never let me thank him. Never let me pay him back. Didn't want to talk about it. Nothing. And I'm telling you, that's the closest I ever came to just being homeless,
Right.
And this guy who didn't have to do anything for me just stepped in and did it. And I was thinking about that on the rest of the drive home. I was like, boy, if I had, who knows, if he hadn't done that, I mean, I probably wouldn't have finished this degree. I don't know what I would have done. I certainly wouldn't have this job. And I just started thinking about other people like that. And I thought, one day when I win the lottery, because this is how I think people think about philanthropy, that you've got to have money to do it,
Right.
And one day when I win the lottery, I'd love to start a charity that helps people who are in just exactly that position. They're working, so they don't qualify for other types of charity. They have a short-term emergency, and maybe they just need a few $100s. I'd love to be able to do for them what this guy did for me. And as I start to think about that, I started thinking about what the word charity means. And that's just a part of my my background in language. And it turns out that the word charity actually just means compassion for people. There's not any money attached to that word, really. We've attached a lot of money to it, but not in the original.
Right, because charity could actually extend to things like empathy and
Precisely.
And just emotional support would even be a form of charity.
That's absolutely right. And I had sort of an epiphany. And I thought to myself, what? This is what I've missed the whole time. It's not about how much money you have. It's about just what you do with what you already have, right? That's the point of charity. And that makes sense. All the people who helped me in the times when I needed it most, they didn't have any money, really. I mean, they just cared about me. And I thought, well, you know what? That's something I can do. And so I went home and I thought about it for a couple of days, and I made a commitment to downsize my life to the point that I had about $350 a month that I didn't have to spend to live. And I'm telling you, that was a major accomplishment.
Right.
And so I opened a very dinky website online because, I knew one of the things I knew is that none of my friends were going to ask me for help because it's hard enough to ask for help at all. It's very embarrassing for friends to do it. So I opened a website, and remember, this is back in 2002. Now, this is pre-Facebook.
Right.
This is before there's crowdsourced funding. I mean, there's no such thing as a GoFundMe page. They don't have that. I opened a very dinky website that at the time I thought was the height of computer programming. I programmed it myself. Very little that I knew almost nothing about that. But anyway, I opened a very small website, and it just said, essentially, listen, we've all had these short-term emergencies. People have helped me, and I'd like to try to, continue in their tradition by helping other people with similar situations. So if you have a short-term emergency, let me know, and I'll do what I can. And it was totally anonymous. There was no way to give. I was the only source of income. And that's what I had thought Modest Needs would be, to be really honest with you. That's what I had thought it would be. I thought that I would continue along my career path as a professor, which I frankly loved, and that I would do this just as a hobby. And, this would be like on the millionth page of Google, and once a month or so, somebody would be desperate enough to actually find this little website. They'd ask for help, and I would vet the application in the easiest way possible. And if everything checked out, I would just pay their bill, whatever was causing the problem. And that is really all Modest Needs was designed to do. That was the beginning of Modest Needs.
Okay, and you really haven't even strayed from that. I mean, it seems like the simplest genesis of an idea that can obviously become such a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, the truth is that even though now we have, and we're obviously a lot bigger.
Right.
A lot bigger. I mean, I remember, just to give you an idea, I remember a time my graduate students asked me, because it became clear, I was going to have to choose whether I was going to be a professor or do this, because I couldn't do both. I mean, Modest Needs just exploded. People demanded. It was so funny. On the first day that people really found out about it, I did get quite a few applications, but a lot of people demanded to support this. This is something we've needed for a long time. And I remember thinking to myself and actually sharing with some people, how big do you think this could get? And I said, well, wouldn't it be awesome if one day we could give away $10,000 in a month? And that would be that'd be big. Okay, so that would be $120,000 a year charity if you gave everything away, right? And this year we'll do around $1 million.
That is phenomenal.
It's a little different than it was before, and I'm very proud. Just to tell you something, I'm very, very proud to tell you that one of the things that we have done over the last couple of years, one of the philosophies behind Modest Needs is that it is designed to encourage people who might not normally support an organization to really see what their giving power is. That's an important thing. People need to know that their money really can make a difference, even if they're not Bill Gates.
Right.
Over time, we had taken a lot of grant money, and it helped us get to where we are. But eventually, it was time to step back and say, you know what? It's time to get back to how this really started. This needs to be about people, real individual people helping people, as they can with what they have, not necessarily giant foundations, et cetera. And so that $1 million is going to come all from individual people. There's not going to be any foundation money in that, no corporate money, just individual folks.
That's beautiful.
And often 30, we're talking an average. Well, now our average has gone up quite a bit. I mean, a lot of people give $100 at a time, but when you balance that out against the $5 and $10 contributions, really the average is only about $30 or $40 a contribution. So think about how many people that is who are just giving a little bit, and the impact that they're having on not just the lives of the individuals that we help, but on our economy, on the economies where the people who we help live and work. I mean, it's a huge impact, and I'm just really, really proud to be a part of it at this point. It's amazing.
Yeah, and I think that's the takeaway from this is, if you feel like you don't have much to give, you can realize through a charity like this that, you're not the only person, and other people who are in similar situations as you who really want to help out but just don't have vast resources are all pooling together to just make really big differences in people's lives.
Right. And, people often ask me, they say, what's the difference between that and, say, GoFundMe? GoFundMe is really, I'll give you an example. GoFundMe is really nice, and obviously they raise tons and tons of money, much more than we do. But, it's all based on, a lot of it's based on emotion. People read a story and it moves them, and they give some money, and that's great. Well, a lot of what we do, the stories that people have at Modest Needs are also, in some cases, very, very moving, and in fact, almost all cases. But we've also vetted those stories, and we know that they're true. We
Right.
know that before it goes on our website, we know that what that person has told us is exactly the case. And other, or, GoFundMe's a business, but basically, they don't have time to do that because they let anybody post, and you end up with millions and millions of applications, some of which may be okay and some of which probably aren't. One thing that was important to me when I started Modest Needs is with so little to give, I just wanted to know that the person I helped really needed the help. That's all I wanted to know. And that's what we've tried to carry on with Modest Needs as it's grown. We do make sure that the people who we work with actually need the help, that they qualify to get this help, and that the money that people give us goes toward the application as described. So in other words, we at Modest Needs, you don't have to worry that somebody's going to ask for help to fix their car and then go buy a TV. That's not going to happen. We're going to fix their car. So I'm very proud of that as well.
Okay. And I guess this kind of brings to mind a recent situation that involved GoFundMe, where my son's friend in school had committed suicide. It was very unfortunate. And his sister had taken him in because their mother had recently died. And so it was just this horrible, awful situation I wouldn't wish on anybody. But they, in order to pay for her little brother's funeral, she set up a GoFundMe, and they were actually able to raise that money. But it was a very, very short term. So I guess what I wanted to ask is, had they presented this to Modest Needs on a really short turnaround, like I think it was even less than a week, would Modest Needs have been able to help them with that?
Well, it's possible. I mean, it would depend on the cost of the funeral, of course. But we've turned a lot of applications around in less than an hour.
Oh, wow.
So it's not as if, a lot of our funding is raised after we, post the applications, but we do have an emergency fund. And if we really have a great application, like, for example, that application sounds like something we would do. We do have a list of people who are very generous with us and very generous with the people who apply for help from Modest Needs, and we can reach out to those folks. And it's very likely that they will fund the application.
Okay.
So the short answer is it depends, but probably.
Okay. So you had mentioned that very, very shortly after you even started this little website, and please tell me this thing was on GeoCities.
I don't think it was.
Okay. So shortly after you started this, you got just tons and tons of interest and people just incredibly adamant. So how long did you operate this yourself before you actually became an official charity?
Not long, because so this launched on March 21st of 2002. By April 23rd of 2002, and I remember that because it happens to be Shakespeare's birthday.
Oh, okay.
April 23rd, 2002, I did the Today Show and CNN back to back. Okay. And from that point, I mean, Modest Needs, if there was ever any sense that it was not going to grow quickly, that was gone. And it was very clear that I could not incur the liability of operating this by myself and not as a charity. So Modest Needs had been around less than a month when an SEC attorney in Nashville volunteered to do our application for us. So we applied for 501c3 status in early May of 2002, and we got it at the end of June of that year.
Okay. So
just about a 2-month turnaround.
Wow, and that's really quick to be escalated up to the national level like that.
Yeah, it was really overwhelming, and I as far as so we became a charity at that point. Of course, we have a board of directors and all of those things, but really, I was the only person working with Modest Needs. It wouldn't be until 2005 that we had our first employee. So for 3 years, I did all of Modest Needs.
Oh wow.
And it just grew and it grew and it grew and finally it became clear we were going to need an office space and at least one person to help me, and we had one of our donors got us an office, a little tiny corner office. We moved into that office that was seriously about 50 square feet, and me and one other person. And we ran Modest Needs there for, another 3 years, and then we moved into a larger space. And, I think the largest number of employees we ever had was something like 30 employees on both operating on both coasts. And then we pulled in from that. That was getting that was too big.
Okay.
So we moved. So we changed how the organization worked, and we wrote a lot of computer programming, a lot of code that replaced a lot of the manual work that had to be done with the applications. And we were able to, pull our expenses back and downsize. I thought that was very important, to keep the costs as low as we can.
Okay. Well, that's just awesome. I mean, I love this story. I've heard it before, I'll confess, but it is such an awesome story.
Thank you.
Me, and it's not boring hearing it a second time, for sure.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
So one thing that I wanted to ask, because this podcast deals pretty heavily with religion and its effects on society, and I never once heard you talking about how you thank God for the opportunity or how people were angels. And so what I'm wondering is the background of this charity. Is this a completely secular endeavor? Yes
and no. I mean, I have personal beliefs that are, partly behind this, but Modest Needs itself does. I think we all have whatever we believe. We have some belief, but Modest Needs is completely unaffiliated with any religion or political position or anything else. It is as secular as you can possibly get with a charity.
Okay, and so this charity not being affiliated with a religion or a church is just a minority in this ocean of 501c3s that are churches and religious charities and faith-based organizations that may or may not do the kind of work that you do, certainly not the way that you do it. But how do you feel that Modest Needs kind of stacks up to these religious organizations, and do you have to kind of compete, for lack of a better term?
Well, you raised an interesting question. It's really two questions. Let's do the first part first. How do we stack up against, religions that affiliate, or charities that affiliate with a religion? Here's the truth. I'm not really sure because I haven't spent a whole lot of time studying what other charities are doing like that, because I'm more concerned about just what we're doing and trying to be the best that we can. However, in my personal experience, the organizations that are not specifically churches, because all churches are 501c3s, right? They're supposed to be. So organizations that are not specifically churches, I haven't run into a lot of organizations that would disqualify somebody on the basis of a personal belief, or qualify somebody on the basis of a personal belief. I'll give you one example that I know for sure. I mean, Catholic charities, obviously affiliated with the Catholic Church. But I've never, we've actually, talked to them. We know sort of how they work. They were as close as you could get to what Modest Needs was doing before we came around. And obviously we're very different than they are. But I've never heard of them turning anybody away because, say, they weren't Catholic or they had to meet some sort of criteria. Churches might do that, but not charitable organizations that I know of. Now, I'm sure there are.
Okay.
But not the ones that I personally know of. And in fact, in New York, that would be illegal, right? I mean, so this is why I don't know of anybody. Since I'm in New York now, boy, I'll tell you what, the second that a charity turns somebody away that wasn't necessarily a church, the second a charity turns somebody away because they refuse to conform with a particular political or religious belief, that charity would be out of business,
okay.
Immediately. So that's question one. The more interesting question, do we have to compete? Boy, did you ever hit the nail on the head, okay? Everybody thinks that the world of – and see, I did too. I mean, I didn't know anything about the charitable world when this started. And most people think that the world of the nonprofit world is just a bunch of happy, smiling people holding hands and, trying to change the world. It's cutthroat business,
right?
It really is. And so, yes, you have to compete. You don't just have to – it's not just with religious organizations. You compete with everybody. The way that a lot of charities see it – now, Modest Needs differs here, but I just will tell you. The way that a lot of charitable organizations see it is that, say, if somebody is giving to another org, they're not going to give to you. So you need to take money away from organization A in order to get it for yourself.
Right.
And they operate that way. I have seen, I'm not going to name any names, I'm not going to tell any specific stories, but I have seen just outright cold-hearted things that if people knew the people in the orgs involved, I'm telling you, they would be over tomorrow. It's just awful behavior. But with Modest Needs, it's really simple. We encourage people to support a lot of orgs. I think, if you've got $10, you don't need to give all $10 to Modest Needs. Give a couple of bucks to us and a couple to your animal shelter if that's what you want to do. You really ought to diversify your charitable giving. You shouldn't put all your eggs in one basket any more than you would when you bought stocks, right? You don't buy all tech stocks. You diversify, and you should do the same thing with charitable giving. You should diversify. So if you've got $100, I highly recommend that you don't give all of it to us. I'd love for you to give $25 to us or $30, but take the other money and give it to other orgs that need help. There's no reason we can't do that, and that's how I wish we would all operate. But that's our philosophy anyway.
I feel like that's a very rational and clear thinking philosophy.
Thank you. I mean, it's worked for us. We always seem to have what we need. So that I think is a part of the function of that.
And I was kind of curious. This is really just a small point and maybe completely insignificant to anybody, but I was curious what the applicant to donor ratio looks like. Because obviously, if you have 50 donors, you could help one applicant, or you could help 50 applicants. It just kind of depends. And so it just seemed like a really curious point to me. Like, are there more applicants than donors, or does that vary?
Well, it's really the better to answer your first question. The number of donors and applicants is right now almost equal.
Okay.
So that's you would think we would have lots more applicants than donors. No, see, what we've actually done is we've streamlined our application process. One of the last things we did with a major grant, we actually had an impact study done so that we knew how to revise our application process. So we made sure we were getting exactly the right people in the door at Modest Needs. The help we were going to give them was really going to make a difference. When we did that, we sort of equalized the amount of donors and applicants. So that's a good thing. But that doesn't matter because you have to remember the average applicant's giving $30 at a time. The average donor is giving about $30 at a time, while the average applicant is requesting about $750 to $1,000. Right?
Okay.
So when you have, even though you have the same number of donors and applicants, you probably, with that same number of donors, you probably can fund, depending on the cost of the application, maybe 2 out of 10 applications. Because you just don't have the money to do everything, and that's why we let the donors make the decisions as to what they think we should fund and when. That's how Modest Needs works. So people go in, they give, they attach their contribution to a specific application, and once those applications have the necessary funding, we fund it. So our donors really are the ones who make that call. But it would benefit us a great deal to have certainly more donors than applicants, not just because you need more donors. I mean, that's not necessarily the thing. We need, with everybody, people can only give so much. We know that, and when you have so many people asking for, $750, $1,000, maybe $1,500, which is really, that's our maximum. Beyond that, it's not really a modest need anymore.
Right.
But they're asking for that. And, so what is that? 50 donors at $30, right? That it takes to raise $1,500.
Right.
And so you see the problem there.
Yes. So the takeaway here is become a donor.
Exactly. That would be a huge takeaway. But I will say this is very encouraging. Do you know that about 60% of the people that we help actually do become donors to Modest Needs? They may not be huge donors, but they give, and a lot of them give monthly. I mean, $5 a month for the rest of their lives.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
and that actually kind of comes full circle on your story, where once you realize that you've been in need and you've been helped, and people didn't have to just mortgage their house in order to kind of help you out, that you could, once you get back on your feet, do the same for other people.
That's exactly right. And, I'll tell you a really funny story. Very briefly, we had this person who applied for help at one point. I'll never forget her. She was so funny. She had the request for help was that she lived in a trailer, like a mobile home that was paid for. But the bathroom, the floor in her bathroom had somehow become rotten. And she went to get into the bathtub one day, and the bathtub sort of fell through the floor.
Oh, no.
So she's got like a big hole in the tray where the bathtub used to be. I mean, it sounds funny now, but it's not funny when that's like, how you clean yourself, right?
Oh no.
And so the cost. Now, listen, think about this. Okay, the cost to repair this was $700, and that was about. And this was the person who's working. She was disabled, but she was working a minimal job. I mean, she was doing what she could, right?
Right.
Her total monthly income was around $800. Okay.
Oh wow.
So we're talking about an expense that's she owned her home outright. She's doing everything she's supposed to do, but here's an $800 expense that's just going to wipe her out, or $700 expense. So we funded it, okay, and she got her floor fixed, and that was very. Do you know that? No kidding. For 10 years, this person took the time to sit down, write a $1 check, and mail it to us for every month for 10 years.
Oh wow.
So, that's just unbelievable. That's so kind. I mean, I don't write checks for anything. I remember the last time I wrote a check. That somebody would take the time to sit down and remember to do that every month. That is so kind. And especially when you consider what $1 is to a person who has 800 of them a month,
Right.
and expenses to pay. So, yeah, I mean, it really makes me happy to see people who Modest Needs has helped come back and do what they can to help somebody else. I'm happy that such a high percentage of people do that.
Yes, that is great. So another thing that Modest Needs does, from what I understand, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but on the donor side, it is actually possible to see testimonials from applicants who have been funded and have had that need filled to kind of get an update on how that person is doing.
That's right. We actually, when the only thing we ask of our applicants is to say thank you. That's it. I think it's appropriate that if somebody helps you out of a difficult situation, you should say thank you. So we ask them to say thank you, and we forward the thank you notes to the people who contributed towards that application. So it's nobody, just to keep, nobody really wants to know people's names or whatever else. We just send the letters. Or send the letter to all of the donors that the applicant has written, and then we post that on our website just as well. So the answer is yes, and then we actually do follow-ups. But yeah, we do, and I think that's one of the most important things. People need to know that what they did had an impact. So there you go.
Right, and
Yep.
and I think that kind of just stimulates the reward center and gives you kind of that endorphin rush when you're like, this person was actually like, I gave $5 or $30 or whatever it was, and this person didn't get kicked out of their home. And
That's right.
it would encourage you to just keep doing it. I mean, if you can help people, why wouldn't you?
Giving feels so good. I mean, it just makes you feel alive and connected to people in a way that's hard to explain. Can I tell you a quick personal story from 2 days ago? Just 2 days ago.
Of course.
I was okay. So my birthday's in July, and I waited to celebrate until my son could be here with me. And our traditional celebration is that we go to dinner at this steak place that we both really like. So we go to this steak place, and we end up sitting next to these two people who are from Britain. I'm not sure why they were here, but they were very nice people, and we talked for just a second, say hello, and okay. So bottom line, we're paying our check, and they get their check, and they can't pay their check because their credit cards don't work. They've come here, and they haven't told their bank that they're here, so the bank is declining all of their credit cards.
Oh, okay.
All right, that's happened to me when I've gone overseas. Everybody's had that happen. It happened to me if I go to a different city. So here are these two people who haven't gone crazy and eaten a lot of food. I mean, they just don't have, their cards aren't working. And so to make a long story short, we bought their dinner anonymously. We didn't tell them, and we very quickly escaped that restaurant.
Right.
So that they couldn't like follow us out or find us or anything like that. I will never see those people again. Never. I will never hear from them again. Do you know how that was like the best birthday present I got, was getting to do that. And I got to overhear that it was one of those people's birthdays, which is why they were there.
Okay.
So it turned out to be really, really fun. So yeah, just to get back to what you're saying, there is, if you can help somebody, even a little bit, I mean, why wouldn't you do it? Nothing feels better and nothing does more good. I mean, that's how we make this world into what we want it to be.
Right. And it's little things too. So if you'll allow me, I'd like to share a little story as well.
Sure.
So one of the things that I really like to do, and this is, not even related to giving to specific needs, but more to the, it makes you feel good. It's rewarding to just help people out for no reason. But one of my favorite things to do is if I go to Starbucks and I'm in the drive-thru, then when I go to pay for my coffee, I will tell the person at the window, hey, whoever that is behind me, I'm just going to go ahead and buy theirs for them. And then what is really cool about that is by the time that person realizes that they just got free coffee, I've already driven away. I'm gone. I'm long gone.
Right.
And, it just doesn't matter to me. But what matters is that somebody had something nice done for them, and maybe they were having a terrible morning and that just made their day.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I'll tell you something, people don't forget those acts of kindness. It may seem little to you, but absolutely right. I mean, for all you know, that $2 represented a huge part of that person's amount that they had to spend, right?
Right.
Or they were having a terrible day. But we used to get a lot of testimonials, a lot of thank you notes from people who's, that I'd lost all faith in humanity before, I found out that people actually cared, and I found that out through Modest Needs. And I'm not taking credit for all of that. I'm certainly not, but you just never know. The point is you never know what else is happening in the life of the person that you help, such that your kindness doesn't just buy them coffee. I mean, you've done a lot more than get them a cup of coffee. You've changed how they see the world. And that, you can't buy something better than that for $2.50, right?
Right. and that's actually a really good reason for all of our listeners to go out and just become donors immediately.
Yes, please. You can do that by going to modestneeds.org, and you can do that right on the front page in about 1 minute. And we would just love your support. We have lots of applications that, the summer is a terrible time for all charities. It's awful, right? But we are lucky this summer. We actually have a matching grant. We have a $50,000 matching grant, and we're trying not to leave any of that on the table. And we still need to raise about, $19,000 to claim the rest of it. So, if you give now, you're going to double your money. It's a good time to start at Modest Needs.
All right, we've got work to do then.
I'm just thrilled that we were able to get the matching grant. Frankly, I mean, it's made a difference in our applicants' lives this summer for sure. But no, I mean, everything else, we're actually doing, we're doing great. And I'd love to see more of your listeners over there working with us. It's a lot of fun. What we do is a lot of fun. In fact, some people have described it as addictive. I would be one of those. And so, we'd love to see some folks over there. But
well, that's great. I mean, I can testify that donating to Modest Needs is incredibly simple. They have done a really great job on the website and on the technology behind that to allow you to just, with a few clicks and some entry on the keyboard, you're just done in minutes. And that is going to make a lasting impression, a lasting difference on somebody's life. All right. Well, Dr. Taylor, I really appreciate your time, and I appreciate you coming on our show. We don't have a great big following yet, but hopefully we will someday.
But John, listen, it was really a pleasure, and it means a lot to me that you thought to ask. It's great to be able to tell this story, and really nice to be able to talk to people like you who care so much about it. So thank you very, very much for having me on.
No problem. I hope to hear from you again soon.
Oh, you certainly will.
I was told by a conservative Christian Republican that this country's welfare state has gotten out of control and that the government handouts were only encouraging lazy people to be lazy. This person then explained to me that if people weren't relying on the government for welfare, then it would be the church's responsibility to care for the poor. He said that's how it's supposed to be, and I have all kinds of problems with that. Now, I want to make sure everybody knows that I understand there are plenty of churches out there doing good work in their communities. It may be inflammatory and unfair to paint all churches with the same broad brush, but for this segment, I want to speak from my personal experience and my own continuing observations. That is to say, not all churches actually use tithes to help people who need help. Too many of them use the money to build bigger buildings and fund programs geared exclusively toward their own members. So, on to my problems with this welfare plan. First, and this is easily the most obvious problem, there are 65 kajillion churches in the United States who make all of their money tax-free and are recognized by the government as charities. But there are still poor people. I can't be the only person who thinks this alone completely dismantles the entire argument, right? I mean, even with government welfare programs in place, what the fuck is stopping these churches from eradicating poverty? There are more people tithing to these sham charities than there are poor people in the country, right? So how could you even begin to make a stupid argument like, it's the church's responsibility to care for the poor? I call bullshit, dude. Second, why do you think government welfare programs exist in the first place? Do you honestly think that if the churches were fulfilling their promise of being stewards of humanity, that FDR would have assembled a brain trust to work out social security programs? Why would that even have been a blip on the radar? And how much more in line with your conservative ideals would the government be if its fiscal plan didn't include entitlement programs? You hate welfare? Fine, fucking prove it and start putting your church's money where its big hypocritical mouth is. The last point I want to make is this. It's incredibly obvious to everyone where all of this tax-free tithe money is going. I mean, just within a 1-mile radius of my house, there are 20 churches of all religions and denominations, all of which receive tax exemption from the government, that range in size from 10,000 to 60,000 square feet. 20 goddamn churches within a mile. 1 block from one of these churches, there's a guy who stands on the street corner playing a guitar and begging for money. 2 blocks from another one of these churches is an intersection that is a regular panhandling spot for a legless veteran, a homeless mother, and some scruffy dude. I don't know his story. My point is, how do you get to a 60,000 square foot building full of frills and gold trim as a charity with a guy down the block who can't even afford to take a fucking shower or replace his shoes? Hey guys, you're not being sneaky about how you're putting your tax exemption to work. We see it. So here's the thing. The conservative Christian hatred of the welfare state isn't grounded in a sense of moral obligation or charity. It's grounded in a long simmering resentment over the loss of control Christians have enjoyed in this country for far too long. It's the realization that people don't want a church's help when it comes with strings attached in the form of church attendance, conformity to approved lifestyles, and endless proselytizing. Unfortunately, though, it's not the realization that these "we only want to help you the way we want to help you" views go against every workable definition of charity in the books. Hell, Paul Ryan this week looked a nun in the face and said, "The social safety net disincentivizes work." If Jesus is real, he couldn't possibly recognize your brand of poison and would probably rather have a government welfare state than climb into bed with you brood of vipers. Random verse. Random verse. Random verse. Random verse. Our random verse this week comes from 2 Nephi 9:50. Goes like this.
It's my turn. I'm reading it. I'm reading it this time.
Do it.
Come, my brethren, every one that thirsteth, come ye to the waters, and he that hath no money, come buy and eat. Yea, come buy wine and milk without money and without price.
That was awesome.
You damn right it is. Jeez.
So, having no money and getting things without price, there's a word for that,
Free
know what it is?
99. Yeah, that's pretty awesome. So,
Yeah.
Context here, obviously I don't know, but getting things for free sounds good to me.
Yeah, I like free. Also, complimentary sounds very nice. You could just be like, hey, complimentary wine and milk for the first everyone.
That was witty. You get wit points. Everybody who's listening, we have a real witster here. He's witty.
I think that's going to be like my superhero name. It's going to be the Witster.
That's all right. You know what? Sure. More power to you.
Okay. So anyway, you don't buy things that are free. If you say that you don't need money and there is no price, like, you're not buying anything. It's really stupid to say that. Like, do you require a credit card for verification, but then you don't charge it?
I feel like you're reading too much into the semantics on this one.
Why do you always do this to me? I want to read lots into it so that we can just make stupid jokes about it.
Oh, okay. Everyone who thirsteth, talking about thirsty hoes. That's what this is. It's just everyone's a prostitute. Oh, nailed it. Drop the mic.
Dude.
Walk away.
Dude.
What?
You want to know my honest opinion?
Oh, no. I want you to keep it to yourself.
I was just going to say, thirsteth is a stupid fucking word. That should never even be written on a piece of paper. There's no need for that.
Well, actually, theoretically, shut up.
That was a good comeback. I feel like I was really put in my place there. Do you know that we're not even talking about this verse? We're just insulting each other.
Basically, that's what the random verse should be.
It should just be like Jon and Logan talk trash about each other. Oh, dude, that could be our new segment.
Come ye to the waters, bitch. I'll take you there. Catch me outside the waters. How about that?
Yeah, I got your waters right here.
Yeah, come buy wine and milk. You get a free punch to the face with it. Oh.
Like a knuckle sandwich.
But you're not actually buying it. You're just getting it for free, but you also get a punch to the face. Maybe that's the price. It's a punch to the face.
But is it a price or is it a bonus? Like, what if you're into that?
I mean, I'm sure that would be a win-win for you. You get milk and wine, and you get punched in the face, and
or a slap in the ass.
Maybe you get off on that, and then you can go home and drink your wine after having gotten punched in the face.
Why do you have to be wine? Like, I don't really like wine.
Well, I guess you could drink the milk, but is that like your post-orgasm drink of choice? Milk?
Ew! No! Why are you talking about my orgasms?
Well, I wasn't talking about you at all until you brought yourself into this, so...
Oh, the proverbial you, like my morning boners.
Yeah, we're done. We're done.
Hey, that was the callback.
Let's wrap this one up.
All right, so I just don't understand, like, if you're urging people to come to the waters because they're thirsty, then they could just drink water, because water is, like, free, and then you wouldn't have to worry about paying nothing for a thing like wine and milk. I just don't get this verse.
I mean, chances are that the waters is like an allusion to some sort of lake or river or stream of some kind, and chances are that you probably don't want to be just straight drinking out of a lake or river or stream.
No, but what if they're talking about, like, the living water, like Jesus? So come to Jesus, and then you'll get wine and milk. Dude, it's like an enticement. It's almost like the van that has free candy written on the side of it. It's like, you're not going there for candy, but...
You're going there for the punch in the face.
Yes, that's exactly where I was going with that. Thank you.
So the only people who can get free wine and milk are people who are submissive and want to be dominated.
Or just really like pain.
That too, I guess.
That could work.
That's a thing.
Okay, so what the Book of Mormon is saying here is that if
shit, this is from the Book of Mormon?
Yeah, Second Nephi. Oh, dude, I forget that you are super, super duper irreligious and have no frame of reference. Yeah, Second Nephi is in the Book of Mormon. This is not a Bible verse. And yeah, this is Mormon stuff.
I mean, I thought that would change my outlook on this verse, but it didn't really. It's kind of the same.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so I could tell you where this is from, and I could give you a little context on it, and I still think that you would feel about the same about it. The whole punch in the face thing. It just works.
Don't forget the punch to the face. It's a real song. Look it up. Homestarrunner.com.
Homestarrunner.com. This episode brought to you by Homestarrunner.com.
Dude, they need that. They have... I don't think the guys updated the site for, like, years. Which is a shame.
Well, given the fact that that's probably, like, what, 20 years? No, not 20. You're not even...
I'm not even 20? Fuck you.
You're not even... You're just a babby.
Lethal babby.
Little babby.
I am lethal babe. No, I was watching it when I was 8 or 9. It's been around for a really long time.
Okay, so yeah, like a decade. He probably hasn't updated it. That's crazy.
A random verse turned into a conversation about Homestar Runner.
Because Homestar Runner is more interesting than the Book of Mormon.
Ooh, roasted! All you Mormon bitches, go to homestarrunner.com. Roasted!
How funny would it be if that website, like, isn't even a website anymore.
No, I think it is. I actually was disappointed because I wanted to show Christine a bunch of the... Yeah, it still exists. I wanted to show Christine a bunch of the videos, so I looked up a YouTube channel, and I think they have some stuff listed, but not everything, and it makes me sad.
Okay, I'm absolutely going to link homestarrunner.com in the show notes to this episode.
Oh, our poor listener.
Listeners, we love you.
Here, I'll go check my email.
My email.
Strong bad email. Okay, we're done.
Yeah, I think we're done here. So, this verse from on a scale of an empty beer can to a bottle of wine, what do you give it?
I'm gonna give it a shot glass of Chardonnay.
That's weird.
Well, that you asked for my... Don't ask for my opinion if you don't want it.
Well, I guess, no, that works. I mean, that makes as much sense as this verse. So, yeah, I got you, fam.
Nailed it.
All right. And we're done.
Yay! We did it! Carissimo! We turtled around for 25 minutes. Yeah, we did it.
We did it. We did it. Yay! We're done. If you're enjoying this show and think it's worth supporting, we wouldn't even ask for 10% of your income. You can head on over to our Patreon page at patreon.com/wayward and pledge as little as $1 to keep us going. You could be the hero who helps us offset the costs of software and hosting and makes this show even better. You know what else would make this show better? Lots and lots of good reviews on iTunes and everywhere else you get your podcast. Lots and lots. In the meantime, if you have questions or comments, please send us an email to podcast@waywardwillis.com. Intro music was provided by Austin Cologne and used with permission. You can find more of Austin's music linked in the show notes. This podcast is a media production of Willisware LLC. All rights reserved.
This has been The Wayward Willis. If you liked what you just heard and you want more of Jon and Logan, you can follow us on Twitter @WaywardWillis, Facebook at facebook.com/TheWaywardWillis, or at willisweb.com. If you want to help the show and have a few extra dollars, you can donate per episode or per month on Patreon at patreon.com/wayward. We'll be back next week.